Mechanically, 100%. So bodies, I like it.
Yeah.
I've just got too many little things sitting around. We're not using them, driving them.
In the world of heavy equipment, the safest path has always been to follow the manufacturer's roadmap. Sell the newest models, offer the best financing, and lean on factory warranties to close the deal. That is how most dealerships build their reputations and their revenue. But in a quiet corner of southern Indiana, a man named Clinton Chitwood decided to build something different, and in doing so, he ended up reshaping the way an entire industry thinks about old, worn-out machines. Clinton didn't come from a business school or corporate training program. He grew up on family land in Monroe County, Indiana, in a household where heavy machinery wasn't a luxury item, but a working necessity. His father ran an excavating operation, and from a young age Clinton was surrounded by bulldozers, tractors, and excavators that were kept alive far longer than most people would expect. In that environment, a machine wasn't something you replaced the moment it showed wear. It was something you understood, maintained, and repaired until it simply couldn't be repaired anymore. That upbringing planted a mindset in him that would later put him completely out of step with where the rest of the equipment industry was heading. When Clinton founded CNC Equipment in 2004, there was no dramatic vision statement, no outside funding, and no 5-year plan to dominate a national market. It began the way so many small equipment businesses begin, buying used machines, fixing them up, and reselling them to local contractors and farmers. For the first few years, there was nothing to distinguish CNC from the countless similar operations scattered across the rural Midwest. It could easily have stayed that way forever, a small regional yard known only to the people nearby. The turning point came around 2008, when Clinton made a decision that many in the industry would have called reckless. He began buying decommissioned military surplus vehicles. These weren't your typical trade-in trucks from a construction fleet. They were machines that had spent years, sometimes decades, in active military service, cycling through the Department of Defense's disposal process before eventually landing in public auctions. Depending on the auction, buyers might find anything from classic deuce-and-a-half cargo trucks to larger 5-ton haulers, aging hums, generators, forklifts, or specialized recovery vehicles. Some of these machines had never left domestic soil, sitting on National Guard bases their entire service life. Others had been deployed overseas before finally being retired. What made these vehicles so interesting wasn't their appearance, because most of them looked rough. Faded paint, dented panels, and worn interiors were the norm. What mattered was what sat underneath all that wear. Military vehicles were built to a completely different standard than civilian trucks. They had to survive deserts, mountains, freezing winters, and deep mud, in situations where a breakdown could be a matter of life and death rather than a mere inconvenience. That meant heavy frames, straightforward mechanical systems, generous ground clearance, and parts that were designed to be swapped and repaired rather than replaced wholesale. The same features that made these trucks unappealing to the average buyer, slow speeds, Spartan cabs, and unfamiliar mechanical layouts, were exactly what made them valuable to someone willing to put in the work. Clinton saw potential where almost nobody else was looking. With the right combination of mechanical know-how, fabrication skill, and patience, these forgotten machines could be turned into dependable civilian workhorses, especially for people operating far from cities and dealership networks. Instead of selling them exactly as they rolled off the auction lot, CNC began transforming them. Crew cab conversions added seating capacity. Suspension systems were upgraded for comfort and durability. Steering setups were modified for better handling. Custom fabrication solved problems that no catalog part could fix. Much of this work happened entirely in-house, which meant Clinton and his team weren't limited by what a supplier happened to have in stock. Every successful build added to a growing reputation. CNC was the shop willing to take on the project nobody else wanted to touch. At the time, this wasn't an obvious bet. The broader equipment industry was moving in exactly the opposite direction, toward machines loaded with electronics, emissions controls, and proprietary software that only the manufacturer could fully service. Big companies were pouring billions into new technology, and dealerships were building their businesses around late-model inventory backed by financing and warranty programs. Clinton, meanwhile, was doubling down on machines that most people considered outdated. He had noticed something the rest of the industry had overlooked. For a lot of customers, especially those working in remote areas far from a service center. Simplicity mattered more than sophistication. That single insight became the foundation for everything CNC would eventually build. While the Cypress vehicle business was taking shape, something else began happening that would end up mattering just as much. In October 2012, CNC uploaded its first video to YouTube. There was no production crew, no scripted marketing pitch, and no polish. Clinton simply pointed a camera at the work already happening in his shop and let people watch. At a time when most dealers were putting out glossy advertisements designed to make every machine look flawless, Clinton did the opposite. He showed equipment exactly as it arrived: rust, leaks, cracked welds, and all. Many of his videos ran well past 30 minutes, sometimes close to an hour, as viewers followed him through muddy auction yards, climbed into neglected machines with him, and watched engines get taken apart piece by piece. What set these videos apart wasn't length or production value. It was honesty. Clinton would point out cracked frames, worn undercarriages, leaking seals, sloppy weld repairs, and any other sign that a machine had been neglected or patched up to hide a deeper problem. Sometimes he walked away from equipment entirely, explaining on camera exactly why it wasn't worth the money being asked. He wasn't trying to convince anyone that every machine on the lot was a good deal. He was teaching people how to evaluate equipment the way an experienced buyer would, which meant sometimes telling them not to buy at all. That same honesty extended into a growing problem across the internet: equipment fraud. As online marketplaces made it easier to buy heavy machinery sight unseen, scammers began setting up fake dealership websites, stealing photos from legitimate auction listings, and advertising machines that didn't exist. Buyers from across the country would wire deposits, sometimes tens of thousands of dollars, only to discover there was never any equipment to begin with. Clinton used his channel to expose these schemes directly, breaking down fake websites, suspicious pricing patterns, and stolen photographs, and encouraging viewers to verify addresses, confirm ownership, and inspect machines in person whenever possible. In teaching people how to spot dishonest dealers, he inadvertently made it easier for viewers to recognize a trustworthy one too, including his own company. None of this followed the typical formula of internet content built around exaggerated reactions or manufactured drama. There were no gimmicks designed to inflate views. People kept coming back because they knew what they were getting: an unfiltered look at real machinery, real problems, and real decisions, even when the truth wasn't flattering to the seller. As CNC's reputation grew, the company leaned further into a philosophy that ran against the direction the rest of the industry was heading. Starting in the late 1990s and accelerating through the 2000s, manufacturers had begun packing their machines with cleaner engines, onboard computers, electronic controls, and complex emission systems designed to meet tightening environmental regulations. These changes made equipment quieter and more efficient, but also far more complicated, to the point where many repairs could only be handled by the manufacturer or an authorized dealer. CNC took the opposite approach, treating older machines not as scrap, but as candidates for a second life. Equipment arriving at the Indiana facility from auctions, surplus sales, and private sellers would be disassembled, inspected, and rebuilt from the ground up. Welding, fabrication, machining, and hydraulic work all happened under one roof. One of the shop's most valuable tools wasn't a massive excavator, but a CNC plasma cutting table, capable of producing precise steel components from raw plate. Paired with in-house welding and fabrication capability, it allowed the team to manufacture brackets, structural reinforcements, and replacement parts that were no longer available through normal channels, something especially important when working on older military trucks or discontinued construction equipment. This approach was most visible in the military truck conversions that became something of a signature for the company. Former Army cargo trucks that had once hauled supplies over rough terrain were rebuilt with crew cab conversions, upgraded suspension systems, modified steering, and custom fabrication tailored to individual customer needs. None of these modifications came from a factory parts list. They were engineered from scratch inside the shop, often through trial and error, careful measurement, and a lot of welding. The finished trucks kept the rugged durability that had made them valuable to the military, while becoming genuinely practical for contractors, ranchers, and buyers working in remote parts of the world. Meanwhile, the broader industry kept moving toward complexity. Modern machines, increasingly depended on electronic control modules, proprietary diagnostic software, and emissions technology designed to meet strict environmental standards. Diagnosing a problem often required specialized tools and dealer-authorized technicians rather than a wrench and some experience. This shift helped fuel a growing right-to-repair movement, as farmers, independent mechanics, and equipment owners argued that owning a machine should come with the practical ability to fix it. Manufacturers, for their part, argued that restricting access protected safety systems and intellectual property. The debate eventually made its way into courtrooms and legislatures, with companies like John Deere becoming a central focus of the controversy. CNC never positioned itself as part of a protest movement. Clinton didn't lobby lawmakers or frame his business around activism. Instead, he simply built an alternative, one machine at a time, and let the results speak for themselves. He rarely argued that new technology was inherently bad. His real question was simpler: does the added complexity actually serve the person using the machine? If an older piece of equipment could be fixed in the field with common tools, while a newer one sat idle waiting on a specialized technician, which one was truly delivering more value to its owner? As the YouTube channel's audience grew steadily through the 2010s and into the 2020s, CNC found itself in a position that many small businesses spend their entire existence chasing. Videos of equipment inspections, military truck builds, and shop projects were drawing millions of views a month, and inquiries were arriving from customers well beyond Indiana's borders. The internet had effectively erased geography, turning a regional dealership into a business shipping machines across the country and overseas. For most entrepreneurs, that kind of momentum would be the signal to expand aggressively. For Clinton and his wife Bridget, it became a reason to slow down and protect what they had already built. Much of that international demand came down to practicality. Buyers in remote parts of Africa, Australia, Alaska, and other isolated regions often needed equipment that could be repaired with ordinary tools rather than proprietary software, simply because dealer support and replacement parts weren't readily available where they worked. A rugged, mechanically simple engine was often worth more to them than the latest electronic upgrade. Clinton had recognized that need years earlier, and now it was paying off at scale. By this point, CNC had every ingredient needed for rapid expansion: a modern facility with large service bays, reinforced floors capable of supporting massive machines, serious fabrication capability, and an online audience most marketing departments could only dream of. Countless companies have taken exactly that kind of momentum and turned it into multiple locations, outside investment, or a national dealership network. Clinton chose a different path. He has said plainly that keeping the business tightly controlled matters more to him than growing it quickly, because every new location means more managers, more layers of supervision, and more distance between the people making decisions and the people doing the actual work. Quality gets harder to protect. Communication slows down. Decisions that used to happen across a workbench start happening in meetings instead. That decision stands out even more against the backdrop of American business culture, where growth is often treated as the ultimate measure of success. Companies chase acquisitions, open new locations, and bring in outside investors to satisfy the constant pressure for quarter-over-quarter gains. Choosing to stay relatively small, by comparison, takes a different kind of discipline. For CNC, staying small meant keeping fabrication, rebuilding, welding, and machining under one roof instead of outsourcing it to contractors scattered across the country, preserving the consistency that had built the company's reputation in the first place. In the end, CNC Equipment's real achievement was never its size. It was the trust it built, one honest video and one carefully rebuilt machine at a time. While much of the industry chased newer models and increasingly complicated technology, Clinton and Bridget Chitwood proved there was another way to succeed, one built on craftsmanship, transparency, and the simple idea that an old machine, given the right care, still has plenty of life left in it. Like, subscribe, and follow for more.